You may be familiar with a screwball comedy starring Peter Sellers called The Party, directed by Blake Edwards. This is Sellers as the main character. It's a bit problematic nowadays. I'm quite sure this film could not be made today. He is in brownface, playing an Indian man, so yeah, a lot of problematic. But we're going to be discussing a different issue today, and that is the lack of attribution to French film director Jacques Tati, whom The Party borrows so heavily from. I'm talking a complete ripoff of Tati gags, and I'm going to show you scene by scene so that you can see for yourself. What's unfortunate is that Tati is never mentioned in the DVD extras in the film, nor in interviews by Sellers or Edwards, and I feel like he should have gotten at least some bit of credit for some of the humor that they took from him and recreated in a lot of ways. So here we have Sellers arriving at the party. This is the very beginning of the film, and he's driving a very unique vehicle. It's kind of a luxurious jalopy. It's very different from all of the other cars, and immediately it creates this comedic moment when he's trying to park. And it's a very loud vehicle. He creates quite an entrance. Here in 1953, we have Monsieur Hulot arriving at his beachfront hotel in a very similar looking car, very much a jalopy, and very different from everyone else's. So right away, the similarities in the characters' entrances are spot on. Both men are very much fish out of water characters, very socially awkward. There's no real place for them in this society. Monsieur Hulot in other films and in color, you'll be able to tell that he is wearing khaki neutral colors, and that allows everyone else around him to be more colorful. Hulot is distinct but very subdued looking because sometimes he's almost a background player when you're watching the comedy unfold around him. This is the house in The Party. It's very mid-century modern, has these unique, luxurious water features all around, like a river running through. Look at these round steps. You'll see something similar in a moment. There's even a fountain controlled by a switch on this electric panel that creates some laughs as well. Very similar to Villa Arpal, which is what you see here, created by Tati for Mon Oncle. This is Monsieur Hulot's sister who lives in the house. She's turning on her fountain to impress her friend. It's a running gag throughout the film. When she turns on the fountain, it sputters and it makes this ridiculous sound. But what Tati is doing is poking fun at modernization and the whole fact that everything is very aesthetic and looks nice, but its functionality is lacking, as seen here in The Party. This walkway is a little too narrow for the foot traffic going through. It's not ideal, but it looks nice. This is lifted directly from Tati, this exact moment. Here in Mon Oncle, we have the characters wanting to stay on the wider stones of the path and not step in the little pebbles when they want to pass through. It's an exaggerated moment, but it's the concept that was born here. It's also a moment that Tati did in a short called Night School. It's just these little details where he's poking fun at functionality again. Here, Peter Sellers is trying to clean off his shoe, and he ends up losing his shoe. It turns up later on a waiter's platter. So there's a lot surrounding the home in both films. The home is a character in itself. It drives a lot of the situations for comedy. In The Party, there are waiters as characters, and they have a lot of gags for themselves. Take this moment, for example, which is very similar, of course, to Mon Oncle. Here we have Tati mistaking the lily pads for the round rocks. He's just trying to be helpful. He's kind of a lovable klutz in a way. Here is Peter Sellers discovering the complex intercom system at the very modern house of The Party. with a lot of interesting technology, which creates some funny moments. But here again, he's just a fish out of water, and he's having fun by himself because no one's really including him. This intercom box is very similar to one that we've seen in Tati's movie Playtime. Here we have an older gentleman who works in the building, and Tati is trying to make the point that technology is causing less interaction between humans and creating a barrier and isn't really making life easier. Here's Sellers when they run out of chairs at the party. He gets on this little tiny chair that's much too low. There are multiple gags regarding this chair, which is very similar to Playtime. Monsieur Hulot is amused by these modern chairs, and of course, he has to poke and prod because he can't leave anything alone. And he sits in it and he sinks too low. Again, the aesthetic outweighing functionality. There's a whole scene dealing with these chairs. And later in Playtime 2, there are some fun scenes with other chairs. We have a drunken waiter at the party accidentally swallowing a cork there because of the door situation. And there's always friction between the waiters. The waiters, of course, were taken from Tati. Here in Les Vacances de Monsieur Hulot, we have a waiter that's a little too preoccupied and tries to go through the door. Another running gag, the friction between these waiters. Tati also did this in Playtime, where the waiters carry a lot of the comedy as they're trying to navigate this restaurant that was hastily put together, and throughout the whole night, they're having these moments where their shoes get stuck to the glue that's not dry, or they're tripping over things because the layout is just not functional, and it creates all of these moments that drive the action and the comedy. Here's Sellers in the backyard at the party when he accidentally sets off the sprinklers. Look at his movements here. We've seen this before in Les Vacances de Monsieur Hulot when he accidentally sets off the fireworks from this little shed and he's just running around. And he also has his own sprinkler moment. Both films feature female leads that are kind of ingenue characters, innocent, pretty women that other people take interest in, but Tati and Sellers get close to because the women don't see them as a threat. They just see them as playful guys who are innocent. Here's the female lead in Les Vacances de Monsieur Hulot. Both films have a nice little dancing scene between these characters. And it's important to note that these men are not liked by the quote-unquote adults. Most adults in the film don't really understand them, and few people appreciate them and find them charming because they're mostly irritating, not on purpose. This is probably my favorite scene in Les Vacances de Monsieur Hulot. Watch this. It just shows the charm of the character. Hulot doesn't want to touch her bare back, so he specifically uses the halter strap. It's brilliant. It's just this little moment that distinguishes him from the other guys. And they share this fun little dance scene. They're the only few adults in this kind of kid party masquerade, and everyone else is in the other room listening to the news and paying attention to the stock market. It's just a wonderful scene. I love it. Although the women take a liking to each of these main characters, they don't run off into the sunset with them at the end of the film. There's this kind of innocent hesitation. In the party, it's more implied, oh, she might see him next week when he's going to get his hat back. But he gets in his jalopy and ends up driving off alone. And that's how the film ends. Spoiler alert, but it's satisfying in a way because it still makes you feel good. Here's the end to Les Vacances de Monsieur Hulot. We have all the characters gathering together to exchange cards and say, see you again next summer. Monsieur Hulot goes to say goodbye to the girl, but she's a little preoccupied and they have a missed moment. The other adults are kind of like, what's up with this guy? He's got a bandage on his nose from his firework debacle and he woke up everybody the night before. So he's not really getting the response that he thought he was going to get here. These people aren't giving him the time of day, so he just goes off. But there are some characters later who will approach him. And in the end, he takes this jalopy and drives off. Very similar endings. But there's a little bit of melancholy to Monsieur Hulot because he didn't get to say goodbye to the girl. In the original film, because Tati did 3 versions of this and added to it, I'll make a separate video on that. But in the extended version, there's a scene where the female lead is driving home on the bus or train and she's talking to her aunt and they're going through photos from their trip and she's saying, oh, here's another one of Mr. Hulot and another one. And it has more of a connection. So that wraps it up. Let me know in the comments below if you've seen these films, if you have a favorite Tati or Sellers movie. I've also created a video where I show modern day actors citing Tati as their influences. You may be surprised by who names him and who borrowed heavily from him. I also have a Patreon. One of the tiers is a bi-monthly online French film discussion that I host on Zoom. I'll let you know which movies we will be watching. I'll help you find them. I'll also be providing French vocab lists for some of them because they use a lot of slang or words you might not know. And it's just helpful to have these interactive moments because if you're learning a language, you cannot get by on just book study alone. These types of engaging activities will help you get so much further. So please consider joining us.